Hello, beautiful humans. I am coming to you on a surprise live here tonight just because I wanted to unpack one of the most asked questions of all time that I get constantly. I get it in the comments and I get it in my Ask Megan lives all the time. Do Chad and Lori really believe what they are being or what they're teaching and what they're putting out there? There is a lot to unpack from court today. A lot happened. We had two of the Daybell kids testify today, and there was a lot to say about that. I'm going to recommend my friend Lauren Matthias's channel at Hidden True Crime. She does a great job of unpacking what happened at court today, and her husband, John, who is a forensic psychologist, goes over a lot of the psychology behind what the Daybell children testified to today. um, Thank you for joining us at this surprise live. Ashley, thank you for moderating for us. And Beth and Martha T, thanks for joining us. I'm going to try and do a decent job of unpacking this most asked question. And hopefully, I'll be able to get some more questions answered by some of the channel members tonight as well. So, the question I get asked all the time is, do Chad and Lori really believe the teachings that they have been putting out there? And I've been a little bit reluctant to unpack this question because it's complicated, right? There are many different ways to answer this question, and there are many opinions about whether or not they really believe it. And it's easy to get dismissive and to say, oh, they don't really believe it. They were just manipulating people. But I think it's a lot more complicated than that. And I've done a couple of different videos on my channel about Chad and Lori meeting and about elevation emotion and about the role of teachings from the Mormon Church in all of this as well. And so I'm going to play a couple of clips from videos that I've already done on my channel to try and sort of unpack the dynamics that happened between Lori and Chad and some of the things I think led them to getting to where they are and whether or not they actually believe it. The other reason that I wanted to come on and talk about this question tonight is because once they played the jailhouse call from court, I think it was on the 14th, day 23. Once they played that jailhouse phone call, it gave me also a lot more insight into whether or not Chad and Lori believe it. So we're going to be unpacking that jailhouse call as well. We're going to listen to it and comment on it as it goes. And so I hope that'll give some more insight. Nitty Gritty, Joni Shepherd, welcome. Thanks for coming. Blue Sea, Brandy, and Ashley, again, thanks for moderating for me tonight. I really appreciate you guys showing up at literally the last second. I think I emailed about 15 minutes ago to say that we were going to do this tonight. So, Martha T, I want to just address this question for just a second because I think a lot of people identify. When I was in a cult, I believed that I believed it. Now that I'm out, I realized I didn't actually believe it, but because I believed I did, I functioned like I did. It's really easy to get into this kind of mindset, especially if you've been indoctrinated from a young age, especially if there are lots of family members and or friends who are in a cult type of a situation, and they're confirming all of the things that you're biased to confirm in your own mind. It's really easy to get caught up in it and to really think that you do believe it. So one of the things we're going to talk about is elevation emotion and how that plays into people believing what is being taught in a cult. So I'm going to try not to make this too quick here, but I am going to share my screen and hopefully you guys will be able to see the video. This is a video that I have done previously, and it was again another most asked question about Lori and Chad, and I hope that this will give you some insight. So we'll play this and then we'll unpack a little bit afterwards of the Savior. And I can imagine that Lori sitting in that audience of people listening to Chad, she's already enamored of him because he's had these near-death experiences. She already thinks that he has special spiritual powers. And she also has this confirmation bias of believing that she's more righteous and more special than other people. So when Chad starts talking vaguely about some of you people are going to be instrumental, I absolutely think that Lori was sitting there thinking, it's me. I'm the one. I'm going to be instrumental. I'm going to help gather these people. I'm going to bring this all to pass. And her emotions are elevated because she's feeling loved and accepted in this group of people. And so she takes that as a sign from God, confirming to her that her thought that she's going to be instrumental in the second coming of Jesus Christ gets confirmed by her own emotions because she believes that's God telling her, yes, you're right. That thought is true. Okay, so I just want to pause here just to make sure that people kind of understand how this confirmation bias works, especially in the LDS church. So Joseph Smith founded the church based on this idea that he had gone into the woods to pray about which church he should join, and that Jesus Christ and God appeared to him and told him that none of the churches were right. He developed this idea that the Holy Ghost could give you a personal witness about whether or not something was true. And so in the LDS church, we're counseled to pray about things, big things, small things, spiritual things, mundane things, and we're counseled to listen for the voice of the Holy Ghost and also for this feeling, this what they call a burning feeling in your chest telling you or confirming to you that what you're hearing is true and right. And so what I'm talking about there is when Chad and Lori met together, the speech that Chad gave that day at the Preparing a People conference, where he was telling people they're going to be instrumental in the gathering of the 144,000. Lori wanting to believe that that was her because she wanted to believe that she was special. And then having a conversation with Chad after his speech was over, and Chad telling her, wow, you know what? I see this glow about you. And I think you are going to be instrumental in bringing to pass or gathering the 144,000. And I think you might have been a goddess in the past life. So I'm going to go back to this other video because I kind of already unpacked this and I don't want to rehash things that I've already done. So it's just easier for me to do it if I'm already, I've already got a video up about it. So we'll go back and watch this just a little bit. Let's see if I shrink this down and go back. Does that work? How do I get to a little bit about, oh, this goes back. Okay, there we go. So we're going to go to this one. Why would somebody like Lori, who was attractive, and who arguably was married to a very successful man at the time, Charles was a successful businessman. And so why was it that she felt like moving to Chad Daybell was trading up? And so first I want to talk a little bit about the concept of personal revelation. This is a concept that's very, very important in the LDS faith. It is the concept that the entire religion was founded on. Joseph Smith, the story that is told by the LDS Church is that Joseph Smith, who is the founder of the church, as a 14-year-old boy, wanted to know which church he should join. And in the area of upstate New York where he lived, there was a lot of sort of um, religious revivalism going on, and there were many different denominations who were preaching that they had the best church. And he wanted to know which church he should join. And so he went into the woods to pray one day and ask God which church he should join. And he claimed at that time that he had a vision from God, that God and Jesus Christ appeared to him and told him that none of the churches were correct and that they were all corrupt, basically. And they basically told him that, you know, he would get further instructions down the line. And he ended up forming his own religion, which he claimed to be the only true church on the face of the earth. So the entire religion is founded on the concept of personal revelation. In other words, members of the LDS faith believe that they can speak directly to God and get answers from him that will guide and direct the choices in their lives. The president of the LDS Church is a prophet, and he claims to speak directly to God for the worldwide church and for the entire church population. In fact, the president of the church has two counselors. The three of them make up the presidency of the church, and then there are 12 apostles in addition. And those 15 men are all considered to be prophets, seers, and revelators, meaning that they have authority to speak to God to get direction for the church and to prophesy about what those instructions from God are. And so it's a very important concept in Mormonism and the LDS faith. We're taught to seek our own personal revelation from God. We are told that if we have especially an important decision in our lives, that we're supposed to pray and get an answer from God. And we're told that if we have a feeling of a burning feeling in our chest, that that is God telling us that what we're asking for is right. That's God saying yes to you. It's if you have a thought accompanied by that burning feeling, you're instructed that that thought is what God wants for you, and that's what he wants you to do. So we're instructed to pray to God and get a personal answer about even minor decisions in our lives. Okay, so I had to mute myself for a second because I had a little doggy come and visit me. So basically, in the LDS church, we're counseled to pray to God and get that spiritual feeling. And so, as I said before, I think Lori was sitting in that meeting with Chad. She got that spiritual feeling that what he was saying was right and true. She got that spiritual feeling thinking that she was going to be instrumental in gathering the 144,000. And then Chad goes and tells her that she's a goddess, tells her that they've been married in a past life, tells her that she is, has this really important role. And of course, she wants to believe all of those things. So it's a little bit of confirmation bias for her. So that kind of brings me back to the entire point that I started out with. The questions that I always get is, do Chad and Lori actually believe everything that they're teaching? And so I'm going to address that here in just a second, but I saw a couple of comments come up that I just wanted to say a quick little thing about. Um, Whitney J, yes, we're doing great. Thank you so much. Everybody's doing really well. The doggy is healed, and my kids are doing well. We're coming up to the end of the school year. My son's graduating from high school. It's about to get really busy out here, but I really appreciate you guys asking about my family and my doggies. So here's another thing. Angel Schultz says, I'm interested in the idea of patriarchal families. It seems odd to me. Everything I know about family is both parents and or partners work together. No one person is the leader of the family. And this is really interesting because it is, I think, pretty particular to the LDS faith that the man is considered the patriarch of the home. He's considered the spiritual leader of the home because he holds the power of the priesthood, and he's able to give blessings. He's able to receive revelation for the family. And so there is this idea in the LDS church that it's the man that does the spiritual direction of the home. He presides in the home, and that the woman has to kind of ask his permission or at least counsel with him to make major decisions and things like that. I think the church somewhat has moved away from this just a little bit, but it definitely still is a pervasive teaching throughout the church. And we definitely see this in Chad's home, where he was the spiritual leader. He was dictating to the family things they should and shouldn't do. He was telling Tammy she shouldn't be playing video games. And Emma said today that it was odd for her, for Chad not to be the dominant presence, for him to not be in charge, and to see him in a moment of weakness was really destabilizing for her, I think. Nitty gritty, I'd make a terrible Mormon. You know what? Me too, apparently, because I did leave the church. It did not fit with the healed version of me. The unhealed version of me believed that I was lesser, believed that it was okay for me to accept a lesser role, and just believed in sort of following with what was being taught without questioning it. And that happens a lot when people get indoctrinated into a religion, or some people say brainwashed into a cult. I think it's not too far away from each other. So this is interesting too, though, Johnny Shepherd, you're right. It's taught that way in Christianity as well. It comes from the Bible that the man, it leads the woman, right? The woman should be submissive to the man. Most just don't follow it. And I think it's an interesting point because I think all of us who read the Bible cherry pick, right? There are certain things that we cling to or emphasize, and other things that we completely throw away and say, oh, I don't believe that. Also depends on which translation of the Bible that you have. Arguably, the King James Version is one of the least accurate versions of the Bible, but it's one of the most popularly used by traditional Christianity. So that's a rabbit hole for another time, something to dig into later. But I wanted to unpack this phone call, this jailhouse phone call that we saw in court last week, because I think it does help us to answer the question, did Chad and Lori really believe what they were being or what they were teaching? And so I am going to go ahead and go back to this other screen, and hopefully the tech will work just a little bit better than what I was seeing before. I'm still getting used to doing all of this stuff, you guys, so I appreciate your patience. So here we are.
The
Nope,
Savior.
this is not the right one. Let me go back to, I hope that I even have one in, I thought for sure. Let me just do this real quick. Okay, here we go. This is the one I wanted to play. And I want to make sure we started the right time code.
Do you recall when he died?
December 12th of 2019.
Of course, it's not at the right time, but we'll get there, guys. Just
Detective,
bear with
through
me
your
for 1
investigation.
second.
That's kind of how I've seen it.
Listen. Yes, ma'am.
These are not
Are
always
your initials on
easiest
that?
things to pull up.
No, not on this one.
I might have the
The key families, but they're not going to.
Okay, I'm going to go back just a little bit. I think this is the right spot.
Says, this was all still before the second coming. The Lord had ordained for us to begin the millennial day within Zion and her cities, while war and chaos reigned everywhere else.
So Lori is reading right now from a book called Visions of Glory. And Lauren Matthias and I did a huge unpack on this book on the Mormon Stories podcast back in October of last year. That is literally 8 hours long. So if you're interested in Visions of Glory, actually the first part of it, I think, is 5 hours and the second part is 3 hours. And we play clips from the audiobook and then we unpack what is Mormon and what is not Mormon about this book. It's an incredibly harmful book. Obviously, it was what Chad and Lori taught from and, carried around with them. It was seen on the chaise next to the pool when Lori was served with papers to produce her children. So if you haven't heard yet about Visions of Glory, you might want to go unpack some of those things. Again, it's both on the Mormon Stories podcast page and also on Lauren Matthias's Hidden True Crime podcast page. This huge unpack of that book. It is a book that talks about the end of times. It talks about the gathering, the 144,000. It talks about portals. It talks about light and dark spirits. So if you really want to understand their theology, that's a great place to go and unpack that.
Hmm.
So it was already like the millennium, they were already living millennial way
It's like a pocket. Yeah.
the whole time.
That's kind of how I've seen it. As begins with a family, then a neighborhood, then a town, then a city. And New Jerusalem is kind of the best example of that.
So what Chad is talking about here is sort of this concept of Zion or a Zion people. Like during the second coming, he's talking about that certain people are going to be more enlightened than others. And it starts with a small group of people, and then it's more than one family, and then it's like a neighborhood, and then a city. And it kind of goes out from there. That's what he's talking about, is the spread of the idea of preparing for Jesus Christ's coming.
Right.
Yeah, it starts small, but grows exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
It's will, and they're doing all they can to destroy one of the key families, but they're not going to.
So they're talking about one of the key families. Chad considers himself one of the key families. And I sped up the playback speed there because it's kind of painful to listen to slow. So I wanted to speed it up a little bit. So hopefully it'll go a little faster now.
I mean, there's so much that I know. I was sitting here thinking about that. I know too much.
Yes.
I can't deny it. I know it's just a matter of time. I just don't know what that timing is.
So I texted Ray. He responded pretty quick.
Detective, I'm gonna pause it there. Did you hear Mr. Daybell say I texted Ray?
I did.
It's because my microphone wasn't up here. Yes, I can. Did you hear Mr. Daybell say that he texted Ray?
Yes, I did.
Through your investigation, did you become aware of any individual that had a nickname or alias of Ray?
Through our investigation, we learned that Alex Cox often went by Ray Lamar. We also associated a Gmail account through phone records back to Alex Cox, and that Gmail was raylamar@gmail.com.
Now, what was the date of this phone call again?
June 8th of 2020.
And was Alex Cox alive or dead at this time?
No, he was deceased.
Okay, so I just want to pause here for a second to note that again, this call took place after Alex had passed away, and Chad makes reference to texting Ray. And at least, Alex is a little bit more creative than Chad was in coming up with fake names. Lamar was Alex's middle name, so Ray Lamar at Gmail or whatever was an alias that he used. And Chad is making reference to texting Ray. So I think they know that they're being listened to. So they're kind of trying to talk in code a little bit. And they're trying to talk about communicating with Alex, even though he has already passed away. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. I'm just trying to read through comments and make sure I'm not missing anything that's important that we need to unpack. If you guys want to save your questions until we kind of get past the phone call, that'll help me to make sure that I don't miss anything. And then mods, I don't know if you guys are allowed to, if you can star comments for me. I don't know how that works or not. So we'll just try to, we'll do the best that we can. So going back to the phone call.
Do you recall when he died?
December 12th of 2019.
Detective, through your investigation, did you find any information that Chad Daybell claimed to have the ability to speak with people who were deceased?
Judge, I'm going to object relevance.
Overruled.
Prior, of course it's relevant. Holy hell.
Through our investigation, interviews with multiple witnesses that were close to him, through the teachings in his books, he would often talk about how he had the ability to see and speak with people on the other side of the veil.
In your honor, I'm going to resume playing at 7:34.
All right, before you do that, Mr. Wood, I think we might be able to assist on the audio.
Yes, I'm glad they're going to fix the audio for us because I had to slow it back down because it was hard to understand Lori. It's going to take them a minute to fix that audio. Yeah, Blue Sea Brandy, I'm going to figure out how to get you guys into StreamYard so you can pin. I think it might be time for me to upgrade to the actual paid version at this point. So I don't think it was a literal text. I
Your
think
honor, I'm
they
going
were
to start
just,
playing at 7:34, and if the court can let me know if it's coming through the speakers.
All right, thank you.
I think
Oh,
they were
good.
just
Usually it's hard to get a hold of him.
talking in code at this point, saying that they were communicating with Alex. And I think they used text as a way to sort of throw people off. They weren't talking to a live person. They were quote unquote texting with Ray, just meaning they were communicating with Alex there. So I think that's what that was about. Okay, going back to this call.
Busy
Okay.
days.
Yes. But I asked him what we talked about. And he's very optimistic.
It was very optimistic for you, or he's very optimistic it could happen.
He's very optimistic. for both of us.
He doesn't know his own project timeline.
He said, stick with it. To what he projected in that paper he wrote.
House renovations always take longer than they think.
Okay, so now Lori is legitimate speaking in code because she doesn't want anybody to know what they're actually talking about. So Lori seems to be throughout this call a little bit passive aggressive in the way that she's talking to Chad and trying to get information from him and being a little sarcastic about the things that Alex is quote unquote saying. And now they're going to go into this metaphor of building a house or doing a renovation on the house. And yes, I agree, Angel. I love Detective Hermosillo. I'm so grateful for him. This metaphor of building a house or doing an addition on the house allows them to talk in code a little bit about the delays that are happening. And I agree, their code is super obvious. They think that they're super smart, but obviously it's not that it's not obfuscating enough for people. And yes, I agree. Lori snitched on herself in this phone call. Totally true. Creepy laughing. Yeah. Cause they know that they're being listened to. And so it's like this sort of nervous laughter and also just very immature, all of that stuff. It's kind of crazy. So they're going to continue with this metaphor of building the house and having delays in construction, and we'll call them out on it as we go forward here.
That's the problem.
I've been watching that Extreme Pools,
Uh-huh.
and the people are like 3 months out.
So she's been watching a show in prison called Extreme Pools or something like that, where, they're putting in pools and they encounter problems or whatever. I think that's interesting.
I mean,
When they estimated they'd have it done, and they're like, we have so many problems, we couldn't get to the backyard, we had to pull a crane over the house to get these huge rocks for the waterfall.
Okay, I'm going to go back there for a second because this is the moment where a lot of people said that Lori told on herself because she said something about finding something in the backyard. Uh-oh. The scrolling. So hard to find, put the proper time codes on here. So
projected in that paper
listen
he wrote.
carefully.
House renovations always take longer than they think.
That's the problem.
I've been watching that Extreme Pools,
Uh-huh.
and the people are like 3 months out.
I mean,
When they estimated they'd have it done, and they're like, we had so many problems, we couldn't get to the backyard, we had to pull a crane over the house to get these huge.
She says we couldn't get to the backyard. We had to pull a crane over the house. So she kind of alludes to it. And we know that one of the reasons why law enforcement decided to look where they did for the children's remains is because Chad had applied for a permit to install a concrete slab in the backyard to park a mobile home on, basically. And that's one of the reasons why they got caught. So I wanted to point that out. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is, they're using this timeline of delays and things like that, the speaking in code. I just want to remind everybody that when Lori got arrested in January of 2020, they still believed that the world was going to end in August of 2020. But by the way, this was Chad's third or fourth prediction of when the world was going to end, when there was going to be an earthquake. And so it's sort of unbelievable anyway. But at this point, I'm pretty sure Lori gets arrested in January of 2020. This phone call takes place in June of 2020. They probably believe that a couple months later that Jesus Christ is going to come, the prison walls are going to fall down, and Lori's going to walk free. I really think that that's what they believe. And I think that there are a lot of other points where Chad and Lori just believe this is just part of the process and we're just being persecuted. And eventually Jesus Christ is going to come or something's going to change and we're going to end up getting out of prison and everybody's going to see that we were correct about our predictions. So I kind of think that's definitely some of what's happening here. So
Rocks for the waterfall.
I can remember last summer, Taylor Hill, Mark's friend, parents moved into a trailer like a camping trailer in their driveway because they were gonna build their house by the end of the year. Guess where they're still at?
Really?
They sold their house to their son. And it's just a weird situation, but you're exactly right. Yeah, it takes forever.
Yeah, there's
Mhm.
always something comes up. Well, we didn't know when we dug in your backyard, we were gonna find whatever.
Okay, that's the real moment where she tells on herself because she says, "We didn't know when we dug in the backyard what they were gonna find." So, I think that's the moment right there that's super disturbing. Um, they were trying to talk in code, but she obviously told on herself, and it really cannot be any more obvious when you're trying to hide things, like certain things are just gonna come out, because subconsciously you really know what you're talking about, and you think nobody really understands you, but it's so obvious, and it just honestly makes me angry all over again. It makes me sick all over again to think that they were so bold and so unapologetic about the things that they did. This is one of the reasons why I'm gonna posit, I'm gonna give in my 2 cents right now to just say, I think they really believe what they were teaching. I think that they've convinced themselves that this is true doctrine. I think that they've convinced themselves that they really are gods and goddesses. I think that they've convinced themselves that everything that they've done is right, that the zombies were real, and whatever psychology comes into it, where Lori, I think, is down this religious rabbit hole and delusion where she's protecting herself psychologically from the truth of the fact that she allowed her children to be killed or that she participated in it. I think that the delusion is part of a coping mechanism, but the way they're talking on this phone call right now really tells me that they did believe what they were teaching, or at least that they convinced themselves that it was true because that's what they wanted to believe. It made them feel more important. It allowed them to justify what they wanted to do in order to have what they wanted, which was to be together unhindered. Lori did not want to be a mother anymore. She did not want to be married anymore. Obviously, Chad didn't want to be married anymore. For a long time, he was telling people that Tammy was going to die. He was obviously so enamored of Lori. He was so taken with her liking him that he would have done anything. And so, as far as who was in charge, sometimes it was Chad, sometimes it was Lori. Who manipulated who? Sometimes it was Chad, sometimes it was Lori. Did they really believe it? Yes. And sometimes Chad was convincing Lori, and sometimes Lori was convincing Chad. It was the perfect intersection of mental illness, religious fervor, and just plain manipulation and greed. And that's all there is to it. So I think the rest of the phone call is going to support what I'm saying here, that they did believe what they were saying to people because they convinced themselves of it. They convinced themselves of it because they wanted to believe it, because it made them feel special, important. It helped them to overcome whatever childhood woundings that they had, where they were made to feel like they were just ordinary people, which, by the way, all of us are ordinary people. None of us are special. And it's this kind of thinking that they deserved to be special. They deserved more than an ordinary life that was just so unhealthy. So I'm going to go back to this so that I can dispel a little bit of my anger here for a second.
And then they're like, we have to redo all the piping, and then we had trouble with this, and then something else happened. So, but they try to make it sound like it wasn't really that long, but it's always like, it's gonna take 3 months. And then 3 months after that, they're like, okay, it took 6 months. You couldn't come in your backyard at all. And now it's not summer anymore. Now it's winter, and your pool is finally done.
Right.
I think that was a reference to when they believed that the world was going to end and when they believed Jesus was going to come, because originally they said it was summer and now it's winter, and then it was winter when Lori got arrested, and so all of that.
Mostly they do it in Florida, places like that. But. So he's optimistic about his construction or construction. Not problems, but plan.
Yeah,
Construction plan, the blueprints are still intact,
yes.
their timing.
And I kind of just said, I texted him what you just said is, you guys are always a little off.
Right, exactly. We just want a real estimate.
Right.
What do
Mhm.
you say?
He just laughed. Did a
So
little-
he did not confirm nor deny that fact. That contractors are always
No,
later than they think they're gonna be.
he's like, it'll work out, how he is.
So I think this is really interesting because obviously Chad is not talking to Alex. So this is really Chad communicating to Lori what he sort of thinks, but pinning it on texting with Alex, who has already passed away. And so he's kind of making this up as he goes. And he can't really be too specific with Lori because they're obviously being monitored. And they're obviously saying that, or Chad is obviously saying that he doesn't really know what the time frame is, but he's sort of optimistic and he sort of thinks that it's going to be okay. And there's a little bit of nervous laughter that comes with that. And it just, I don't know, it's kind of infuriating that he can't just take responsibility. Even in his delusion of calling himself a prophet, he's not brave enough or bold enough or strong enough to actually make a declaration, because then that kind of pins him down to something and he can be proven wrong really easily, right? Instead, he's pinning it on Alex and saying, well, Alex told me this, so I guess I kind of believe it. And so I just think it shows how Chad is even more cowardly than I originally believed him to be.
He did want me to say he misses you. But he's not far from, contact. We can talk.
I think this is pandering to Lori a little bit because, as a quote unquote prophet, he has to sort of pad in this sentimental thing to make her feel some emotions, some attachment, maybe some affection for, poor Alex who's passed away. And he's sort of, you notice his tone of voice changes a little bit. He stops being so giggly at this point. He sort of gets a little sentimental or tries to have some sentiment to his voice. And I think he's absolutely 100% manipulating Lori at this point to calm her down a little bit and to sort of put her back into the mindset of like, this is her brother that Chad is talking to, and that Lori can trust what he's saying.
Talk. You can text him whenever you want.
Yeah, I can't text anybody. Have text.
It was,
Just text for me. That's like me telling you, I need you to tell this person, talk to this person.
I'll text him back. But he's optimistic. I want to go visit him and grab him by the throat and say, really?
Can he? I know he's optimistic, but can he just make us any guarantees? I mean, we did make our down payments and everything else.
Guarantee.
It was like a guarantee, just an end date of our project.
Well, he knows you pretty well. So. He just laughs.
I think that's the second or third time that Chad has said that Alex just laughs. So he doesn't give a commitment. He just laughs. And he is, trying to calm Lori down here. Chad doesn't like that Lori is questioning him. That comment that I put up there, I think that's absolutely true. And Lori at this point is getting impatient. In fact, if you go back and listen to this call on 2x speed, it's really interesting to listen to the change in inflection. Her inflection goes up higher pitched, and she also starts to talk more quickly. So she's obviously agitated and probably a little bit angry at this point.
No, he's I asked him what he thought of the video project. He said it was really nice. He loved it.
Oh, good.
Detective, through your investigation, were you aware of any type of video put out about Alex Cox around this time?
Not around June 8th. But shortly after Alex Cox died, his sister Summer Shiflett made a YouTube video with clips of Alex photos throughout his life and put it to music.
Now, my friend Lauren from Hidden True Crime actually saw this video before it was made private, and she commented that it was super creepy to see the video. It showed pictures of Alex with all of his family members, but no pictures of Alex with Tylee and no pictures of Alex with JJ.
And so we viewed that early on in the investigation, but that's what is being referred to here.
Judge, I'm going to object. That calls for speculation. He can't speculate is what it calls for.
Untimely, overruled.
And Judge, I had stopped playing at 12:13. I'm gonna recommence playing at 12:13.
You may.
Yeah, oh, that's good. Although I'd never heard that song before. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's just something on like iMovie or something that's on your phone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like one of the backgrounds that you can
Church
use or something.
found just a happy one. Yeah.
I don't know, because I've never even heard that one, or I've never seen the app, but I know people can do that. iMovie, it was always on my iPhone. I just didn't ever click on it.
Yeah. The
So,
frustratingly optimistic, I guess is.
so frustrating for us.
Yeah,
We're gonna be
that's what I
completed.
mean.
Thanks for completing your project on time. Will they get a bonus? They do it.
Oh, yeah, we'll give him a bonus. It was good. It was good to talk. You know, I hadn't texted him in a while. So,
So he would still answer all my questions in the same way, you think, if I texted him?
I think you ought to write down some questions for him and maybe even mail them off and see what.
By the way, I wanted to point out earlier, Lori got kind of upset because she said, I can't text anybody. You know, clearly that Chad is the one with the power to communicate with Alex. Lori can't do that. She's in prison. You know, at this point, Chad is still out there walking free. And so I think there's probably been some frustration on Lori's part up to this point that she's been sitting in jail and Chad is out there free doing whatever it is that he wants to do.
What happens? See if he'll respond to you. I have no doubt. Don't forget President Holland's talk. Let's snip it.
Okay, I just wanted to ask real quick if anybody out there knows which President Holland talk, and they're talking about Jeffrey R. Holland, who is one of the 12 apostles. If they're talking about, or if you know which talk they're talking about, I would love to unpack that. I've done a little preliminary search and I have some ideas, but I don't know exactly. But if there's one that you think that might be close to what they're talking about, either the second coming or the gathering or the preparing or something like that. I have a couple that I think it might be, but I'm not 100% sure. So if anybody has ideas, I'm open to hear them.
He seemed like he wants to text you if he could. Yeah, it's all true. That's all I can say. They haven't forgotten. Yeah.
I know they want to work on their project and they're not too happy and thinking, you know, that's how I spelled it out. Oh, just like, I'm busy.
I think Lori's saying they want to work on their projects, but they can't is another reference to her being in jail and not really being able to do anything at this point.
Oh, true
I'm
to that.
good. It's good. It's good.
And I don't know if you guys are catching this, but this is like a movie reference. And I forget it escapes me right now which movie it was, but it's that character that says good. I think it's creepy. I don't know. It bothers me. Sorry for not being super articulate about that.
You know what I'm saying?
No, he's still very interested. He hasn't forgotten about us.
I know he has other projects, so I don't know how much.
Yeah, Alex has other projects. He's super busy in heaven. If you guys didn't know, Lori always believes that dead people are very busy.
I'm not tape.
He's involved in this latest batch.
Wow. Remind him when you do text him back that at the beginning of this project, he said there was only like a 3% chance that there would be trouble.
Okay, this is the part that I think is the most interesting. So at the very beginning of this project, Alex says that there's a 3% chance that there would be any kind of trouble, meaning that they sort of had this plan formulated out. They're carrying out this plan. I really think it was Chad's plan, but I think that, of course, Alex and Lori had some input on it, and they each had their roles to play within the plan. And I think that this reference to there was only a 3% chance that there was a problem meant that they really felt like they were going to be successful. I think they were very shocked when the police showed up and wanted to do a welfare check on JJ. I think they believed they had covered all of their bases and that there was not going to be any problem at all. I don't think they ever imagined that they would get caught. I really think that they believed that they had divine power helping them in whatever this plan was, and that they were just going to get away with everything. And I think it emboldened them when Charles was killed and they didn't get caught and they were released and set free. And I think that that's sort of spurred on this idea that like, oh, okay, this really is going to work and we're really going to get away with this. And we're going to make sure that everything goes really, really well. Yes. Thank you so much, North Wildings. Oh, that was bugging me. It's from Bruce Almighty. Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, going back to the call here.
Certain aspects. And then there's like 100% trouble because that's where it all started. So find out about that.
Right.
See what he has to say for himself on that issue. And you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I think this is really indicative of the way that Lori always communicated with people. She really did use sort of this passive aggressive way of like she's angry right now. She's angry with Chad. She's angry that she's in prison. She's angry that the plan isn't going as it should have gone. And when she's talking about there was only a 3% chance that there was going to be trouble, and then there was 100% trouble, and you know what I'm talking about. I think that here that she's talking about Kay. I think she's talking about Kay interfering and Kay calling for a welfare check on JJ. And that's where all the trouble started. You heard her make reference to that's where it all started. So ask him about that next time you talk to him. Like it's very passive aggressive language. She's obviously angry that things haven't worked out. And she's going to go on with this theme just a little bit of who's causing the trouble.
I do.
recall what I'm talking about?
No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
Judge, I'm going to stop at 1635. Detective, who is asking who to obtain information in that snippet we just heard?
Lori was asking Chad for information.
Your Honor, I'm going to continue playing at 1635.
You may.
So I want to know why that is 100% instead of 3% chance of having a problem.
And again, I think this is another way for Chad to just diffuse the anger away from himself by claiming that he's texting Ray, who's really Alex. And that way, Lori can't get mad at Chad because Alex is the one giving information as to whether or not this is going to continue and be successful.
I think he was somewhat right in that. The other aspect was other people. It was a combination.
No, it was a combination. I'm saying there were other problems, obviously. It's of the location. But what I'm saying is that it's a combination of only, 5 problems.
I agree.
That was a big one.
It was a big one. Uh-huh.
She says it was a combination of 5 problems. And I want to know what other people think about this. It's a combination of 5 problems. And I'm thinking Charles, JJ, Tylee, Tammy, and Kay. That's what I think that she's meaning by that. Those were the 5 people standing in their way from having what they wanted.
So my faith in those kinds of guarantees are lower.
Me too.
And beggars can't be choosers. I get that, but you know what I'm saying.
Mhm.
It's not like I get to pick the colors of everything that I want. He's just gonna have to figure it out.
Right.
Since I'm here and I can't be in charge of the project. So
Yeah, I think she's also frustrated that she's in jail. She would do things very, very much differently than the way that maybe that Chad is handling them. And I really think that this is Lori again expressing her anger that she's not allowed to be in charge. She really wants to be allowed to be the one who's calling the shots and taking care of everything that needs to be taken care of.
Mhm. Yeah. And I've thought back on that entire scenario.
we went over the plan and the blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
And
And yeah, he said that wouldn't be a problem.
right.
Hmm. Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Oh,
Why was that?
it really was.
Right.
No, I don't doubt that. It's just strange how it blossomed. So
So go ahead.
you go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say, so you think it was meant to have complications and
I just want to point out this is the first time that Lori sort of questions, and she says that, do you think it was meant to have complications? And we're gonna see a little bit later in the phone call, and we're almost there, you guys. I'm sorry. Please bear with me. I know it's like really painful to listen to them talk and giggle and have it go so slow. But we're gonna see in a minute where Lori just basically convinces herself that this was part of the plan, that it was meant to have quote unquote complications.
Meant to go that direction.
At some point, yeah.
Well, then you should have said, hey, this is a 99% chance that we're gonna have trouble with this soil.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's all we were asking.
Well,
Could this potentially be good, or do we have to fill it with sand?
I think we sensed that we shouldn't take it lightly, and I don't think we did. I mean, we only discussed the matter with the trouble once, and I thought we cut it off and did well, and now that problem is kind of causing its own trouble.
So we only discussed the matter with the trouble once. And then that's sort of the source of what else is happening. They're dealing with the consequences of that. So I think Lori engaged with Kay at one point right after Lori found out that she was not getting the life insurance money. And I think Chad is alluding to the fact now that that's sort of where they're having to answer for some of those repercussions of talking to Kay at this point. And I think he's kind of trying to blame a little bit and to say, you know, if you hadn't engaged with her, then, you know, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in. It's a little passive aggressive, I'm not going to lie, for him to kind of call her out in this way. So we're getting through this. We're almost to the end.
For itself.
Right. But there's other things in the project where when I'm going back over it, right, that I could have easily done or been inspired to do to avoid a lot of the issues that are going to come up with that.
Yeah.
And Chad basically has no response to the suggestion where Lori's saying, look, I could have done it better. I would have done things differently, and maybe we wouldn't have had all these problems. And Chad is just very silent on that point.
That we weren't made aware of. So you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I
So
do.
it was meant to go this way, you think? That's what I'm saying.
So now she's sort of changing her language. She said, do you think it was meant to have problems? Now she's saying it was meant to go this way, right? Is that what you think?
I do. It's terrible. Minor changes here and there, but overall, this was part of the blueprint. I mean, just
What?
oh, I just wish it hadn't been. But I'm thinking of previous blueprints where the people weren't warned either. It's maddening. Ray's in that contractor position for a reason, and he's not gonna drop us for another project.
Well, can't he like forcibly use a hand, punch some people in the face and get some things done?
Yeah, so this is the part that I think is also really important, where Lori is suggesting that Alex could employ some type of something to get things done. Here's Chad's response.
Some people in particular, like the 3%er person.
Definitely talking about Kay there, I really think.
I don't think he wants to be violent, but
Definitely they know they're being listened to here, and Chad I think he's uncomfortable with the suggestion of violence given everything that's happening.
Mhm.
Well, I'm not saying be violent. I'm saying get their attention.
Me too. What he did was kind of mute her effect. He, I don't know, just kind of kept her in her place for quite a while, to the point it almost diffused any value of her.
Not talking about that. In the beginnings, going back over the whole blueprint and all the things that we've been, I don't know what the word is. When you go through it. Anyway, a lot of that stuff could have been avoided.
Yeah.
Just minor tweaks.
Yes.
And I don't know why it had to go down this road to where we are now in the project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why did I have to get arrested? That's her main question here.
I know. I don't fully understand. I think he'd text you back or write you back.
Ultimately, what I need from you is that the project is going to be finished and everything is going to be fine and it's going to work out.
That's what he said.
Well, I need you to tell me that every day, several times.
Okay. My sweet, lovely Lola. Things are going to work out. Not just because he says so, but because I know so. It's a marvelous plan. So
How do you know so?
How do I know? It's been shown to me, honey. I've seen those beautiful eyes filled with tears as she sings to amazing groups of people. And I've seen that wonderful body dance to heavenly songs.
Your Honor, I'm stopping at 20.
Yeah, I'm stopping it too because I can't do it anymore. Okay, so now that we're done with this part, I'm going to take these headphones off because my glasses and my earrings are killing me. Okay, so that was, I think, the really important part. It was basically Chad, Lori's asking for reassurance, and Chad says, well, Alex says, or Ray says, it's all going to work out. And Lori says, I want to hear it from you. I want you to be the person to tell me, and I need you to tell me every single day. And so then Chad goes into his kind of disgusting little trite romantic voice and calls her Lolo, which is her nickname, and tells her that everything's going to be okay. And she says, well, how do you know? And he says, because it's been shown to me, because I've seen it. So he goes back into prophet mode and basically tells her, I know everything's going to be all right because I've already seen it. And I think that is sort of the nail in Chad's coffin right there, right? So they're talking about the plan and the blueprints and everything that they have gone over prior to everything that's happened. And Chad admits that he was the one who saw the plan. He was instrumental in implementing the plan. Lori says several times she would have done things differently. She could have done things differently if she would have known more. And so this is really like that admission that Chad was really the one in charge at this point. And also like just super disgusting to hear Chad try to be, really manipulative. They're saying like, I've seen those beautiful eyes filled with tears and I've seen that beautiful body dance. I'm like, ugh, please, enough already. So I'm going to go back to some of the comments that I starred, just to make sure that I cover everything that was in the past before I started playing the call. So Marcy MS asks, what do you think they meant by saying we put our down payment down? I think that was kind of like their commitment to this plan. I think their down payment was everything that they did and everything that they quote unquote sacrificed to make this plan come to pass. So it was participating in the deaths of all the people that died. And I think that it was also, moving to Rexburg, Lori moving to Rexburg, making the commitments to pursue this plan, that they were going to be gatherers and they were going to be instrumental. So I think that's personally what they were referring to. Raylan is answering North Wilding's Visions of Glory is the best-selling book in Utah per Lauren as of this date. And yeah, if you go on to, there's a website that shows what book is the best-selling book in each state. And right now, unfortunately, it's Visions of Glory. I think some of that probably is the curiosity about this case, but also there just have been so many fringe groups that really love this book because it's a near-death experience book and because it talks about the end times. And I think a lot of people in the LDS Church are super curious about what's going to happen. They've sort of been primed to prepare for the calamities at the end of days. And Visions of Glory talks in very specific detail about what is going to happen. And I think that brings people some comfort rather than having to deal with this existential crisis of the unknown. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so popular. I wish the LDS Church would speak out against it too. Their way of addressing it was to talk to the author and to tell the author that he would be excommunicated or disciplined if he didn't denounce the book as truth. And so the author of the book, or not the author, but the person who, so in the book, John Pontius is the author. He has passed away. The person that's telling the story to John Pontius is Tom Harrison, who we know is a therapist who works with the LDS Church. And he calls himself Spencer in the book. They asked Tom Harrison to write a statement that basically says that these were fictional, they're not real, that they were just for his personal revelation and they shouldn't mean anything to anyone else. So anytime someone asks Tom Harrison about the book and its veracity, he presents them with this statement, which is what he presented Lauren with when she started asking questions. But that's as close to it as the LDS Church is willing to get. They're not willing to come out and directly say it. So that's really unfortunate, I think. Rowan 2U asks, was Lori always a ticking time bomb? And he's referring to Lori's comment in the interview that she did in the Mrs. Texas pageant, where she talked about all the things she was doing. And she says, I'm basically a ticking time bomb. And I think she's referring to the fact that like she's super busy. She has a lot on her mind. She has a lot going on. And she's also mentally unwell. Hang on one second, guys. Sorry. Apparently my voice is a ticking time bomb too. Occasionally I get allergy stuff and I get like a little tickle in my throat and it comes on super suddenly. So luckily I have some water. Sorry about that. This is an interesting question from Holly. Why have 5 kids if you don't like kids? One sec. So there's definitely kind of this idea in the LDS Church that having a large family is important. And I don't think that it was Chad was the one who didn't like kids, right? I think Tammy liked kids. And so for her, having 5 kids was probably wonderful. She really loved being a mom by all accounts. And so I think it's possible that Tammy wanted a lot of children, and Chad knew that that would sort of make him a little more acceptable in the culture, and so that's why they had that many children. I've known lots of LDS families who have had children even though they weren't necessarily prepared for it or weren't necessarily the best parents, but because it's kind of an expectation in the culture. So I apologize again for my voice, you guys. AJ says, I think the 3% could either be Gibb or Kay. I agree with you. I think Melanie Gibb has caused a lot of problems for them as well. So I think it is really possible that they could be talking about Melanie Gibb as well. Although Kay was the original one who did the welfare check. So that's kind of why I pinned that on being Kay that they're talking about. But I think you're right. It could be Melanie Gibb as well. And then Anna Franco says, why would they expect magical help from deceased Alex when he wasn't considered successful while he was alive? That's a really interesting question. And I think it's because they said that Alex didn't have any special powers, right? But then all of a sudden, Chad came out by saying, oh, he did have past lives and he was exalted in a past life and he did have all of these other probations. And so he is on the super light side. And I think they did that because they wanted him to be a part of the plan and they wanted to be able to pin things on him. And so I think that's the reason why they expected magical help from Alex. And especially once somebody passes away, it's sort of like they have this elevated status where, okay, now they're on the other side. And if they come talk to me, they can give me information of things that are going on there. It's just all part of this delusion. I think it really is. And this is a good point, Ramona. Is everyone on this case sick? It seems like it. I hope not. Let's see. Let me see what else I've missed, you guys. I'm going to try to get this wrapped up. My son, Holly, my son just showed me a Peter Griffin skit with a chud voice over calling the insurance company. Will you send that to me, Holly? I would love to see it and post it on my channel. I think that would be really fun. I think the 3% rabbit says 3%er is directly referring to anti-government militia groups known as exactly that, the 3%ers. That is a really interesting idea. Would you email me? I have another show that I want to do about some of these Church of the Firstborn and Seven Gatherers and these other conspiracy theory things that are out there. My email is megan@third-verse.com, and I would love to hear any of your theories and all of that. I think that they made Alex Ray. It's the first I've heard of it too, and I think it's just a code name that they picked for him, or he picked it for himself, I guess, because he was Ray Lamar, sometimes referred to himself as Ray Lamar. And I think that they started doing that when Lori went to jail, just so that they could have a way to talk about him and what he was contributing. Raylan asks, Megan, has been hinted the LDS Church would lose a huge support of the fringe groups, tithe support of the crime, or if they came out against the book Visions of Glory. I believe that's true. I think there are a lot of people within the church who are faithful, believing members, tithe payers, that would be offended if the church denounced the book. So I think that that's really important. I'm really sad that I'm going to have to go back and rewind and look at this, that I missed a great conversation about the Care Bears and the afterlife. I love the Care Bears. Pausing for just 1 second because my daughter's here and has a question. My daughter wanting to try I have this little lemon and ginger drink that I have in the fridge, and she's been curious about it, and she's like, can I just try it and see if it's good? And I'm like, don't waste it because I want it. Spotify. What is the Spotify link of Blue Sea Brandy? Is that where I'm going to find the discussion about Care Bears in the afterlife, or is that where I'm going to? Oh, is that where I'm going to find the video with Peter Griffin? Okay, so just to make one final point. So the entire point of this this video was, do they believe it? This is the question that I guess get asked all the time, and I think they do. I think that I've shown through this phone call. I think that they really do believe it. I think that they've deluded themselves into believing it. And I think they've convinced themselves that everything that they've seen and heard, quote, and I put that in quotes, seen and heard from the other side is that they've convinced themselves that it's true and that their feelings are right and that they really are doing what they think, they think is their role in all of this. The other part that I think it's really important to consider is the idea of this persecution complex. And this is something that is fairly common in the LDS church because Mormons are historically they have historically been persecuted. That's a true fact. Okay. It's important to look at both sides of the equation, however. So I'm talking specifically about when people from the church came into the Missouri area. And they had been persecuted in upstate New York and they had to move and they kept having to move, right? So they land in Missouri and they start building up communities and businesses there. And the people who originally lived in Missouri, these, Mormon settlers start coming in and they start taking up resources and land and things like that. And Mormons historically, from the very beginning, only want to do business with other Mormons. And so if you're living in the town and let's say you own a store or you're the farrier who does horseshoes or something like that, and all of these new people come moving in, but they're not going to do business with you. They're going to establish their own store and their own farrier and all of that kind of stuff. I talk about this on one of my podcast episodes as well. So they start feeling like threatened by this new community of people who are coming in. Then they find out that these people are practicing polygamy. They're going to start their own bank. This starts to become really threatening to their way of life. And so they start telling the Mormons, get out, you have to leave. And the governor of Missouri actually issued an extermination order in Missouri, which meant that you could kill a Mormon on site and not suffer any consequences from it. So there were people in the LDS church who were losing their lives early on. And through this moving, and then eventually they had to leave the country so that they could practice polygamy and the rest of their religion. And so they feel persecuted because they've lost everything. They've lost their homes. They've lost their businesses. They have to pick everything up and move out of the country. And a lot of people lost their lives on that trek across the plains as well. And so a lot of Mormons come to everything with a little bit of persecution complex where they say, oh, if somebody's being negative about the church, it's because we're being persecuted. And so Chad and Lori come into this. And they believe that the reason that Lori's been arrested and the reason that the police are against them and the reason that they're suffering all of these consequences is because they're being persecuted for what they're teaching and what they believe. So they don't believe they've done anything wrong. The thing that's going wrong with the plan is that they're being persecuted and that there are devils and demons on the other side who are trying to prevent them from preparing for the second coming. And so they really believe that they're being persecuted and that's what's hindering the plan. Not that it was wrong what they did, not that they got arrested and tried and convicted of killing people, but that there's some unseen force beyond the veil that's evil where they believe that that's the only reason their plan can't be carried out right now. And I think that's part of what Lori's asking Chad to confirm is that can Alex confirm for us that he's going to take care of all of these unseen forces that are working against us right now and make sure that we're going to be able to, quote unquote, finish our project or get something done. I shudder to think what the rest of their project was. I think at one point, Chad said that there were something like 30,000 zombies in the United States. They were all going to have to be taken care of. Lauren Matthias, had some information from the Avow website that Chad and Christopher Perrett, who's the founder of the Avow website, were in a conversation about where should we stake ourselves out so that we can shoot all of these liberal zombies that are going to be coming from Idaho Falls. And so it was a literal conversation that they had about continuing to kill zombies. So this obviously wasn't going to stop with just these 5 people. I think these 5 people, it was unfortunate that they just got in the way or that Lori and Chad felt that all of these innocent victims were hindering them from being together and carrying out their quote unquote mission. I think that now having heard the recorded conversations with Melanie on the phone, I believe she also believed it. I believed her kids are also in danger. And I believe that there were a lot of people close to Lori and Chad who potentially would have been in danger. So I'm extremely grateful that we are where we are right now instead of having more people having to suffer and die. But I also do have a continued fear that there are more people out there who have adopted these crazy beliefs and that cling to it. And I'm going to do another episode live or whatever in just a couple of days where I'm going to address exactly that, because I've spoken to 2 separate people who don't know each other, who have independently confirmed more information about the Church of the Firstborn, which is still out there. And there are still people who are believing these things and perpetuating these beliefs, maybe not exactly in the same way as Chad and Lori, but in similar and just as disturbing ways. So I'm going to try and get through some of the questions here now at the end. And I just want to thank the mods again. I want to thank you guys for being here. And I want to thank you for supporting the channel. The best way to support is just to like and subscribe, to share the videos with people you think would find it helpful. If you are tired of listening to all things Daybell, as I am, you can listen to my podcast, which comes out once a week. I'm going to do, I do an episode release once a week. And then after the episode, I do a little unpack Q&A, episode recap sort of thing live. And that's going to happen this Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Central, again, here on the channel. So thank you guys. Whitney J, the time frame that they gave for this phone call was June of 2020. So this was after Lori had been in prison for a few months and before the children were found. Rabbit is answering Anna Franco. The other names I can't be certain, but Alex had started collecting guns and had maybe met some 3%ers at the firing range and gun shops, or even who he bought guns from. I'm really super interested now to dig into this 3% thing. This is super interesting. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Alex Ray was referred to as a contractor, but he was called Lori's protector. Was Lori wanting Chad to get a 3%er to act in Alex's prior role as assassin? Dang, that's a good theory. I think that's very possible and also really, really scary. Hopefully never was able to do that. Overall, we have more questions than answers now. I agree. It's like every time I dig into something, I think I've discovered something that helps me answer a question. Then I find out that it actually brings up a whole lot more. Maybe she was alluding to Jason Mao. I don't know. I want to ask Lauren that question, but she and I have both been so busy that we haven't been able to connect at all or talk about any of our theories at all. So maybe we just need to jump on a live together and sort of knock some of these things out. Let's see. I'm just trying to find a couple more of these. Yes, you're right. Lori G, they said all the law enforcement were Canes. They were all, some of them were even dark. Yes, they think they're the chosen ones and persecuted, and now they have billions and are infiltrating the laws. I think you're talking about the LDS Church because, yes, they do have billions, and Utah is basically a theocracy because there's so many members of the church who are in the leadership in the government in Utah. Let's see. Wasn't actually an exterminate. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Ramona. It wasn't exactly an extermination order. Lying for the Lord has always been part of the church and the sacrament. Yes, it just was that hyper elevated mindset of being persecuted. And so it was, there's another deep dive for another day, right? To talk about the Missouri. And actually, I'll tell you guys too, I am a 7th generation Mormon. My 5th great grandfather was one of the first people to be baptized in the state of Missouri. And I'm going to do a whole episode about that and the rest of my family who were polygamists. And I'm descended from a polygamist family. And it's just really, it's fascinating to kind of dig into that stuff and see how we ended up here. The main lawyer dude cited exactly how the Mormons took Utah and they couldn't get the town messed up. I kind of like Ma, and I think I'm on something that I missed something in the chat there. So sorry, I clicked on it because I thought I would have some comment on it. Shooting of the 30,000 would have been some connection to a malicious style activity. Yeah, weapons like Alex had and a vow, while Chad thought he was the prophetic visionary. He really did. Yeah, so I'm just looking for more questions. So if you have questions, put exclamation marks or question marks on it. So, and thank you, Francesca Lyons. Thank you guys all for being here. Thank you, channel members, for joining. And I really appreciate your support. And I'm just trying to answer questions and help people understand. And the thing that I always want to the thing I always want to emphasize is that the reason I talk about this stuff is so that we can try to have healthier conversations about having healthier relationships and holding people accountable for harmful behavior. And so I always want to talk about that as well, because when Lori started having all of these crazy ideas, these crazy religious ideas, a lot of people in the family were just dismissing her and saying, like, she's not hurting anybody. And, oh, that's just crazy, but it's just Lori. Just let it go, rather than trying to hold people accountable or try to have a conversation with her that would have hopefully gone in a different direction. AJ asks, is that the beautiful portrait that Rex has hanging behind him? That's not my fifth great grandfather. That's not the Mormon side of the family. That's my dad's side of the family. My mom's side of the family is the Mormon polygamous side. My dad's side of the family, actually, most of them came from Texas. And the portrait that Rex has behind him, I have a copy of that portrait also. The portrait is called the West Texan, and that's how they referred to my great grandfather on that side of the family, who he was referred to as Granddad. He was a world champion saddle bronc rider. There is a memorial to him, or not a memorial, but a historical marker to him in the tiny little town of Rankin, Texas, because he was a world champion saddle bronc rider. There's actually a little reel about it, I think, on my Instagram that I did when I visited there last summer. So that's the other side of the family. Anyway, I digress. Again, that's another thing. Did anything surprise you about today's testimony? Yes, a lot of it surprised me. I didn't know what to expect with Chad's children, but I think I was surprised at how indoctrinated Emma seems into the family system. I was surprised at how much Chad has probably controlled the narrative with them, and how much he has I think indoctrination is the best way to say it. It seems like Emma has really bought into Chad's narrative, and it seems like he has told her what to say and what to think about certain things, and given her certain stories about things. And she was really defending him, but also there were a ton of inconsistencies in what she said as well. And I was also really surprised by some of the things that Garth said, because I think that it destroys Chad's story about her dying peacefully in bed. I personally think that she was sleeping up in the upstairs of the cozy cone. I think that's what Chad referred to when he was talking to Emma about moving the mattress. I think that's where she died. And I think that Garth probably had to help Chad at some point to move her. So again, it's like you were saying before, it just brings up more questions than answers. And I don't know if we're ever going to know the whole real story on all of this stuff, you guys, unfortunately. Do you think if they'd never got caught that Lori eventually would have tried to kill Chad? No, I don't think so, because I think, he was the prophet and sort of feeding her the things that she wanted to hear. And also, I don't think there's any way that they were not going to get caught, because they were so dumb about so many things. And I'm really grateful for Kay's advocacy, and that they really got to catch everybody. Johnny Shepard, how do Mormons still believe the teachings? There was never any tangible proof of the plates. You're right. You're totally right. But this is what I'm going to talk about in the video that I do about my Mormon side of the family, because when you're born into it, when you're indoctrinated into it, you almost don't really have a choice but to believe it, because not believing it means differentiating yourself from your family in a way that risks your connection with them. And when you're a child, you just don't have the emotional maturity to do that. So it's just really hard. Holly is asking, what days do the YouTube videos come out? I thought Thursday. Didn't get the notification for today. This was a surprise, Holly. Wednesday is the day that my podcast episodes come out. And then the third Thursday is the time that I normally do my Ask Megan live. So this was a surprise thing just because I wanted to unpack this question that's kind of been ruminating with me and that people keep asking me. So if you sign up for notifications or just hit the notification bell on the channel, you will get the notification when I go live. And I try to post like a placeholder for the video in advance so that, like, for example, the placeholder for Wednesday's video should already be up there that you can see. And I try to do that as far in advance as I possibly can. Marcy, I agree with this comment. This horrible tragedy has brought a lot of amazing people together with so much love and kindness. Love wins. Thank you for sharing your personal experiences. I feel this way too. I've met so many wonderful people through this process. And I definitely appreciate all of the wonderful people and personalities who've been so supportive and everything that I've been able to, all the people that I've been able to connect with through this tragedy. It definitely is a bright spot in a dark time. Do you know you're adored and your hard work and generous offering the space for discussions? Truly, I hope so, you guys. I just want to have conversations about health. I was telling this to my partner the other day. Like, all I want to talk about is healing and moving forward and moving on. But as long as the trial is going on, I feel obligated in a way to talk about these things and to answer these questions, because I think a lot of people are troubled by it and want to have some answers to try and make sense of it. One of the things I said to Adam was, it is senseless. We will never make sense of it. But at least we can try to understand how we got here and how we can prevent it from happening again, at least with ourselves. Like, how can we be healthier people so that we don't harm people in our lives? And how do we take a hard look at ourselves and try to heal from the things that are causing us to behave in unhealthy ways? And I think that's the most important thing. Raylan, is that Dado? No, it's not. Dado is also on my dad's side of the family, is related to Lori and Lori's family. So Aunt Joyce is my dad's great aunt, and Dado is her. She's passed on now, but Dado is her husband. So Joyce and Dado are my dad's great aunt and uncle. So they're my second great aunt and uncle. I'm curious to learn about the 3% too. I was really grateful for all the inconsistencies today. I think that makes it makes the defense look really bad. I do think Emma wants to look like Lori. I think that's super creepy. I don't know if they're showing support for Lori or if it's just summertime and we're doing highlights. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Sometimes I do blonde highlights in the summer too. My hair last year at Lori's trial, my hair was pretty blonde as well. Did you discuss the kid's testimony, Tay? Just a little bit. I just briefly touched on it. I think Lauren at Hidden True Crime did a great job of unpacking that today with her husband, Dr. John. So you guys should watch that one as well. I would shave my head before I got my hair done like my dad's mistress. 100% agree with that. I've considered shaving my head a few times. Let's see. Trying to just make sure that I don't have any more questions. Wow, you guys get up to some really interesting conversations here in the chat that I don't get to see. Oh, yay. Thank you so much. That was really kind of you. I really appreciate that. I was looking at the settings today, trying to figure out how to make it so people could give memberships. And I guess I did something right. I don't know, you guys, this is all, I'm a huge learning curve for me, and I'm just trying to figure it out. So I don't know. Let's see. Like to hear your opinions because you may have insights no one else would have. I do think that's one thing. Like, I do talk very frankly about some of the problems with the teachings of the LDS Church, and I talk a lot about the problems with our family system. And I think some people are not willing to do that just because it's hard. It's really, really hard to examine your own harmful beliefs. And it's really hard to take a look at yourself. And I think all of us throughout this process, at some point, whether we're willing to admit it or not, we have to examine our own role. And there was a time when it was right after the documentary. There's a documentary on the CW network that came out a couple of months ago. And it was a difficult conversation, but I was grateful to be interviewed for that. And when it was over, Larry made the comment that he was upset that they had started out with Lori's family, and that it really should be a conversation about the children. And I agreed with him on that. But after he said that, I really had to take a step back and say how sorry I was that I disengaged with Lori when she was going through her divorce from Joe Ryan, because that was the point that I disengaged from her. I sort of disengaged from the rest of the Cox family. And I think if we had stayed in touch, there's a possibility that I could have been in a position to be a better influence on her. However, I have to have a lot of grace for myself, because that was at a time when I was going through my own really real horrible relationship problems, and I was kind of lost in myself as well. I wasn't a healthy person. I hadn't addressed my own trauma yet. And I don't think that I really could have made a difference with Lori or said anything or done anything that would have influenced her in a different way. But I just had to go back to the point where I at least examined it. I had to go back to the point where I at least looked at it and said, would there have been a time where I could have done something differently that would have helped? Is it possible that I could have been a healthier influence for Tylee if I had stayed in touch? Could I have helped Colby more if my oldest daughter and he had stayed in touch and stayed friends and things like that? I think that if I had been a healthier person, if I had known then what I know now, that could have been possible. But as it was, I had to go through my journey, and the time that I went through it, as it was, there was nothing I really could have done. But I think it's important to at least ask that question and examine it, because a lot of times, if we're willing to dive into where we went wrong or where we could have done better, it's an opportunity for us to take that information forward and do better in the future. So now I know if there's a family member who is acting crazy or saying things that are unhealthy or behaving in a way that's harmful to their children or their spouse or somebody like that, then I'll know how to react this time. I'll know how to confront that person in a healthy way. I'll know how to engage with them or engage with their other children or with their family members and try to have a positive influence. So it's just one of those things that I like to constantly examine. I like to go back and journal about my day or my week or my month and say, where are there places where I could have done something differently, or where did I behave out of wounding instead of behaving out of a healthy place? So I don't blame myself. I don't think it's my fault, but I do want to always examine my behavior and just try to do better moving forward and try to learn from things. Nitty Gritty, thank you for the super sticker. That's really kind. Well, guys, I think I'm going to wrap this up. I'm seeing there aren't a whole lot more questions, but thank you everybody for your support and your help. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your good wishes and your kindness. I agree with you, Rose M, because of Kay asking for a wellness check. I believe lives were saved. I agree with that 100%. And I'm super grateful that she did that. And I'm grateful for everything. So this question was one of the most asked questions. Do Lori and Chad really believe it? The answer is, I think that they really did. Oh, I did want to make one comment about I saw somebody mention the Tim Ballard and the OUR thing. Oh, you guys, at some point I'm going to have to do another video about that, because I was involved with that for a little while I was a true believing member. So I have some to unpack about that too. So anyways, I was really surprised and shocked to hear that come up in trial today, that they were doing basically a fundraiser for that. 5K was a fundraiser for that. So yeah, there's more to come, you guys. There's a lot to unpack with this whole thing. Yes, please like the episode. Please share it. If you're out here chatting and you're appreciating the content, definitely please give it a like. Thank you again to my super moderators for being here tonight, and thank you channel members, and thanks to everybody who gifted memberships and people who are members. I appreciate your support, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Take care, stay out of portals, and be kind to each other. We'll talk to you again soon. I'm sure it won't be long.